Princess Arabella stood before the massive oak doors of the royal library, her heart beating faster than usual. Tomorrow would mark exactly 1 month before her coronation ceremony, and tonight she felt restless in a way she couldn't explain. The palace corridors were quiet except for the soft footsteps of night guards making their rounds, their lanterns casting dancing shadows on the stone walls. She pushed open the heavy doors and stepped inside the library that had been her sanctuary since childhood. The familiar smell of old leather and parchment welcomed her as moonlight streamed through the tall windows, illuminating dust particles floating in the air like tiny stars. Arabella had always found peace among these countless books, but tonight felt different somehow. Her grandmother, Queen Victoria, had passed away 3 months ago, leaving Arabella as the rightful heir to the throne of Valdoria. The kingdom had mourned deeply for their beloved queen, and now all eyes were on Arabella to continue the royal legacy. She was ready for the responsibility, or at least she thought she was, until strange dreams began haunting her sleep. The dreams always started the same way. She would find herself walking through a part of the palace she had never seen before, following a woman in a flowing white dress who seemed familiar yet unknown. The woman would turn corners just ahead of her, always staying out of clear sight, leading her deeper into mysterious corridors that didn't exist in the real palace. Arabella moved toward her favorite reading chair near the window, but something caught her attention. A section of the library wall looked different in the moonlight. She had spent countless hours in this room, yet she had never noticed how the stonework seemed slightly misaligned near the far corner behind the ancient history section. Curiosity drew her closer to investigate. As she ran her fingers along the stones, she felt a slight depression in the mortar. When she pressed it gently, she heard a soft clicking sound, and a narrow section of the wall swung inward like a hidden door. Her breath caught in her throat. A secret passage in the royal library? How was this possible? She had grown up in this palace, explored every room and corridor she was allowed to enter. Yet here was a doorway she had never known existed. The passage beyond was dark, but a faint current of air suggested it led somewhere significant. Arabella grabbed a candle from the reading table and lit it with the matches kept nearby for the fireplace. The flame flickered as she held it up to peer into the unknown space. The passage was narrow, but tall enough for her to walk upright. The walls were smooth stone, worn by age, and the floor was covered with a thin layer of dust that showed no recent footprints. As she moved forward, her candle illuminated wooden doors spaced along both sides of the corridor, each marked with numbers in an old script she could barely read. The first door she tried was locked, as was the second and third. But the fourth door, marked with the number 7 in faded gold paint, opened easily when she turned the handle. Inside was a small room filled with wooden chests and filing cabinets. The air smelled musty, but not unpleasant, like an old attic that hadn't been disturbed for years. Arabella set her candle on a small table near the door and opened the nearest chest. Inside were documents tied with ribbon, letters with royal seals, and what appeared to be official records of some kind. She lifted out a bundle of papers and untied the ribbon carefully. The first document made her hands tremble. It was a birth certificate dated 25 years ago, the year of her birth. But instead of her name, it showed the birth of a princess named Elena Valdoria, born to King Edmund and Queen Isabel on the exact same date as Arabella's birthday. This made no sense. Her parents were King Edmund and Queen Isabel, and she was their only child. Who was Princess Elena? Why had she never heard this name mentioned in the palace? Why was there a birth certificate for a princess born on her birthday? She set the document aside and picked up another paper from the bundle. This one was a letter written in her father's handwriting, addressed to someone called Dr. Meridian. The letter was dated just days after her birth. "Dr. Meridian," the letter began, "the procedure has been completed as discussed. The memory modifications have been successful for all palace staff and family members involved. Princess Elena's existence has been erased from all official records except these sealed documents. Princess Arabella will be raised as our only child, and the truth will remain buried until such time as it becomes absolutely necessary to reveal it. The security of the kingdom depends on this secret remaining hidden. Arabella's candle flickered as her hand shook. Memory modifications? The procedure? What did this mean? Her mind raced with questions that seemed to have no logical answers. How could everyone's memories be changed? What truth was being hidden about this mysterious Princess Elena? She continued reading through the documents, each one adding more confusion to the growing mystery. There were medical records for both Arabella and Elena, showing they were both healthy babies born within hours of each other. There were photographs of two identical baby princesses, and later pictures showing two young girls who looked exactly alike playing together in the palace gardens. The photographs were the most shocking discovery. She could see herself as a young child, but next to her was another girl who looked identical in every way. They wore matching dresses, had the same dark curls, the same bright green eyes, even the same smile. In some pictures, they were holding hands. In others, they were reading books together or playing with the same toys. How could she not remember having a twin sister? The idea seemed impossible, yet the evidence was right there in front of her. Every photograph showed two happy children who were clearly very close to each other. If she had a twin sister, where was Elena now? Why couldn't she remember her? Arabella found more letters, these written in a different handwriting that seemed feminine and graceful. As she read them, she realized they were written by Elena herself, addressed to their parents. The letters spoke of loneliness, of feeling forgotten, of wondering why she had to stay hidden while Arabella got to live in the palace as the recognized princess. One letter, dated only 5 years ago, broke Arabella's heart. Mother and Father, I understand why you made the choice you did, but it becomes harder each year to watch Arabella prepare for a destiny that should have been ours to share. I am not angry with her, for she knows nothing of my existence, but I am tired of being the shadow princess. When will I be allowed to return home? Shadow princess. Elena was alive and had been living somewhere else all these years, while Arabella grew up thinking she was an only child. But why? What could have been so dangerous or complicated that her parents felt they needed to hide one daughter completely? The next document she found was a report from Dr. Meridian, dated 6 months after their birth. It explained something called the Valdorian prophecy, an ancient prediction that had been passed down through royal families for generations. According to the prophecy, twin princesses born to the crown would bring either great prosperity or terrible destruction to the kingdom, depending on whether they ruled together in harmony or became divided by jealousy and ambition. The report went on to explain that previous royal families had dealt with twin heirs in different ways throughout history. Some had allowed both children to rule jointly, which led to periods of great peace and prosperity. Others had seen the twins become rivals, resulting in civil wars that nearly destroyed the kingdom. The most recent case had been over 200 years ago, when twin princes had divided the kingdom's military and fought a devastating war that lasted for 10 years. Dr. Meridian's report recommended separating the twins at birth to prevent any possibility of future conflict. One would be raised as the acknowledged heir, while the other would be hidden away until the first child had been successfully coronated and established as the undisputed ruler. Only then would it be safe to reveal the existence of the second twin, who could serve as a trusted advisor and support to the throne. Arabella sank into a dusty chair as the full weight of this discovery settled over her. She had a twin sister named Elena, who had been hidden away for their entire lives because of an ancient prophecy about twin rulers. Her parents had decided that Arabella would be the one to inherit the throne, while Elena would remain secret until after the coronation. But this raised even more disturbing questions. If Elena was supposed to be revealed after the coronation, why hadn't her parents mentioned anything about this plan? The coronation was only a month away, yet they had said nothing about Elena. Were they planning to keep her hidden forever? Had they changed their minds about bringing Elena home? She picked up another bundle of documents and found correspondence between her parents and various people she didn't recognize. The letters discussed Elena's education, her living arrangements, and her preparation for eventually joining the royal family. Elena had been placed with a trusted noble family, the Duchess of Millbrook, and had received the same royal education as Arabella, just in secret. According to these letters, Elena was intelligent, kind, and well prepared for royal duties. She spoke 4 languages, was trained in diplomacy and statecraft, and had even been studying Valdorian law and history in preparation for her eventual return. The letters painted a picture of a young woman who was ready and eager to serve her kingdom, yet remained hidden away like a shameful secret. One letter from the Duchess of Millbrook, dated just 2 weeks ago, caught Arabella's attention. It was marked urgent and addressed to both her parents. "Your Majesties, I write to express my growing concern about Princess Elena's emotional state. As her coronation approaches, she has become increasingly distressed about remaining hidden. She has served faithfully and prepared diligently for her eventual return. Yet she has received no word from you about when or if she will be acknowledged. She speaks often of her sister and expresses a deep desire to meet her before the coronation ceremony. I fear that keeping her in uncertainty much longer may damage her willingness to serve the crown when she is finally called upon." The letter continued, with more details about Elena's training and her emotional struggles. But what stood out most to Arabella was the phrase, "when she is finally called upon." This suggested that Elena was still expecting to be brought back to the palace eventually, yet Arabella's parents had never mentioned any such plan. As she continued reading through the documents, a disturbing pattern began to emerge. The early letters and reports all spoke of Elena's temporary separation and eventual return. But as the years passed, the correspondence became less frequent and less specific about timing. Recent documents seemed to focus more on keeping Elena comfortable and well cared for, with less emphasis on bringing her home. The most recent letter in the collection was from her father to Dr. Meridian, dated just 1 month ago, shortly after the funeral arrangements for Queen Victoria had been finalized. "Dr. Meridian, as we approach Princess Arabella's coronation, I find myself reconsidering our long-standing plan regarding Princess Elena. The kingdom has known only one heir for 25 years, and introducing Elena now might cause confusion or instability during an already challenging transition period. Perhaps it would be wise to wait until Arabella has been firmly established as queen before revealing Elena's existence. I would value your counsel on this matter." Dr. Meridian's response was clipped and professional. "Your Majesty, with respect, Princess Elena was promised that her exile would end with Princess Arabella's coronation. She has fulfilled her part of this arrangement faithfully. To extend her separation indefinitely would be both cruel and potentially dangerous to the crown's future stability." Arabella realized that her discovery of this secret passage and these documents might not have been accidental. Perhaps someone had wanted her to find this information. The wall section had seemed loose, almost like it had been recently disturbed. Maybe Elena herself had found a way to ensure Arabella would discover the truth before the coronation. The idea that she had a twin sister who had been hidden away for 25 years filled Arabella with a complex mix of emotions. She felt betrayed by her parents for keeping such a monumental secret, angry that Elena had been forced to live in exile, and desperately curious about the sister she had never known she had. At the same time, she felt guilty about the life she had lived in the palace while Elena remained hidden. Had she somehow been chosen as the better twin? Had her parents seen something in her that they didn't see in Elena? Or had the choice been completely arbitrary, a coin flip that determined which daughter would get to live as a princess and which would be erased from existence? As dawn began to break outside the library windows, Arabella gathered the documents she had been reading and carefully returned them to their chest. She needed time to process what she had discovered, and she needed to decide what to do with this knowledge. The coronation was still a month away, but suddenly that felt like both too much time and not nearly enough. Too much time to keep this enormous secret from Elena, who was apparently waiting to be reunited with her family. Not enough time to figure out how to handle a situation that her parents had been managing for 25 years. As she made her way back through the secret passage and into the familiar library, Arabella realized that her life had changed forever in the span of a single night. She was no longer simply a princess preparing for her coronation. She was a twin sister who had unknowingly lived a lie for her entire life, and somewhere out there was another young woman who had paid the price for that lie. The morning sun streamed through the library windows as she extinguished her candle and returned it to its place. Palace staff would soon begin their daily routines, and she would need to act as though nothing had changed. But everything had changed, and she knew that the coming days would force her to make decisions that would affect not only her own future, but the future of a sister she had never known existed. Standing in the doorway of the library, Arabella looked back at the wall that concealed the secret passage. Tomorrow she would return to continue reading the documents, and she would begin planning how to find Elena before the coronation. After 25 years of separation, it was time for the twin princesses of Valdoria to finally meet. 3 days had passed since Arabella discovered the secret passage and learned about her twin sister Elena. She had returned to the hidden room each night, reading through more documents and trying to piece together the full story of why their family had been torn apart. What she found made the situation even more complicated than she had initially understood. The documents revealed that the separation had not been a simple decision based only on the ancient prophecy. There had been a political crisis brewing when she and Elena were born, involving a neighboring kingdom called Astoria that had been threatening war over disputed territories along their shared border. King Marcus of Astoria had made it clear that he would only negotiate peace if he could arrange a marriage alliance with Valdoria's future queen. The prospect of forcing one of the twin princesses into a political marriage she might not want had troubled Arabella's parents deeply. By hiding Elena's existence, they had hoped to give both daughters more freedom to choose their own futures when they came of age. But the situation had grown more complex over the years. King Marcus had never forgotten about the marriage alliance, and he had recently begun pressuring Valdoria again as Arabella's coronation approached. Several documents suggested that revealing Elena now might give King Marcus 2 potential brides to choose from, which could put both sisters in danger. Arabella also discovered that Elena had not been completely isolated during her years with the Duchess of Millbrook. She had been allowed to correspond with a few trusted palace staff members, and she had even visited the palace occasionally in disguise during large public events. Some of the servants who had raised Arabella had actually known about Elena all along and had been secretly keeping both sisters informed about each other without either of them knowing. This revelation made Arabella feel even more betrayed. People she had trusted and loved had been keeping this enormous secret from her while maintaining contact with the sister she didn't even know existed. How many of her childhood memories were actually shared experiences with Elena that had been carefully hidden from her? Reading through Elena's letters to their parents and to various palace staff, Arabella began to form a picture of her twin sister's personality. Elena seemed thoughtful and patient, but also determined and sometimes stubborn. She had apparently inherited their grandmother's talent for languages and their father's strategic mind. Several letters showed that Elena had been offering advice on kingdom affairs from her place in exile, and her suggestions had often been both insightful and practical. One particular letter from Elena to their father, written just 6 months ago, showed a different side of her personality. "Father, I have been thinking about the trade disputes with the northern provinces, and I believe I may have a solution that could benefit everyone involved. What if we offered to reduce tariffs on their grain exports in exchange for them accepting higher taxes on luxury imports? This would help their farmers while still providing revenue for the crown. I know I am not supposed to involve myself in kingdom business, but I cannot help thinking about these problems when I read the reports you send me." This letter was followed by a response from their father, thanking Elena for her suggestion and informing her that the Royal Council had decided to implement her proposal. It had apparently been so successful that the northern provinces had sent a formal letter of gratitude to the crown. Arabella felt a stab of jealousy reading this exchange. Elena had been contributing to the kingdom's welfare from her place in exile, while Arabella had often struggled with the political and economic lessons her tutors had tried to teach her. Had her parents chosen the wrong twin to inherit the throne? But these feelings of inadequacy were quickly overshadowed by a more pressing concern. In the most recent bundle of documents, she found evidence that someone outside the royal family knew about Elena's existence and was planning to use this knowledge for their own purposes. The evidence came in the form of intercepted letters between Lord Chancellor Hawthorne and an unknown correspondent. Lord Hawthorne had served as her father's chief advisor for over 15 years, and Arabella had always trusted him completely. But these letters revealed a very different side of the man she thought she knew. The first intercepted letter was dated 2 weeks ago. "My contact in Astoria has confirmed that King Marcus is willing to pay handsomely for information that could disrupt the upcoming coronation. He believes that if he can create enough political chaos in Valdoria, he will be able to annex our eastern provinces without a fight. The information about Princess Elena could be exactly what he needs." The response, written in a different handwriting, was even more disturbing. "Lord Hawthorne, you must be careful about how and when you reveal this information. If Princess Elena is brought forward too early, she might actually strengthen Valdoria's position rather than weaken it. King Marcus wants chaos, not a smooth transition to a shared ruling system. Perhaps we should arrange for Princess Elena to make her appearance at the coronation ceremony itself without warning to create maximum confusion and embarrassment for the royal family." Reading these letters made Arabella feel sick to her stomach. Lord Hawthorne, a man her family had trusted for years, was actively plotting to betray them. He was planning to use Elena as a weapon against their own family, and he was working with King Marcus to destabilize their kingdom. But the letters also revealed something else. Elena apparently had no idea that she was being used in this plot. According to the correspondence, Lord Hawthorne had been encouraging Elena to come forward on her own by sending her false reports about Arabella's coronation preparations. He had apparently told Elena that Arabella was planning to reveal her existence immediately after the coronation, and that Elena should prepare to return to the palace soon. This meant that Elena was expecting to be reunited with her family very soon, while their parents apparently had no immediate plans to bring her home. Lord Hawthorne was manipulating everyone involved, creating a situation where Elena would likely appear at the coronation expecting a warm welcome, only to cause the exact kind of chaos that King Marcus wanted. Arabella realized she had to act quickly to prevent this disaster. She needed to contact Elena directly to warn her about Lord Hawthorne's plot, and she needed to convince her parents to acknowledge Elena officially before Lord Hawthorne could spring his trap. The next morning, Arabella requested a private audience with her parents, King Edmund and Queen Isabel. They met in the royal study, a comfortable room lined with maps and portraits of previous rulers. Her parents looked tired these days, weighed down by the responsibilities of preparing for the transition of power and dealing with various political pressures. "Mother, Father," Arabella began carefully, "I need to speak with you about something very important. I've discovered some information that affects our family and the upcoming coronation." King Edmund looked up from the documents he had been reviewing. "What kind of information, my dear?" "If this is about the ceremony preparations, Chancellor Hawthorne has been handling most of those details." Arabella took a deep breath. "It's about Princess Elena." The effect of these words on her parents was immediate and dramatic. Queen Isabel went completely pale and nearly dropped the cup of tea she had been holding. King Edmund's face changed from confusion to shock to something that looked almost like fear. "How do you know that name?" Queen Isabel whispered. "I found the documents," Arabella said simply. "I found the secret room in the library, and I've been reading about what happened when Elena and I were born. I know about the prophecy, about the decision to separate us, about everything." King Edmund stood up abruptly and began pacing behind his desk. "This is impossible. Those documents were sealed away. No one except Dr. Meridian and ourselves had access to that room." "The wall section was loose," Arabella explained. "It opened easily when I pressed on it. Maybe someone wanted me to find those documents." Her parents exchanged a meaningful look that Arabella couldn't interpret. Queen Isabel set down her teacup with shaking hands. "Arabella, my darling, you have to understand that we made the best decision we could at the time," Queen Isabel said. "The prophecy spoke of great danger if twin rulers were not in perfect harmony, and we couldn't risk a civil war." "But Elena has been waiting for 25 years to come home," Arabella replied. "According to the letters I read, she's been expecting to be acknowledged after my coronation. Were you planning to keep her hidden forever?" King Edmund stopped pacing and looked directly at his daughter. "We've been reconsidering the timeline," he admitted. "The political situation with Astoria has become more complicated, and we thought it might be safer to wait until you were more established as queen before introducing Elena." "Father, I think Elena is already planning to come to the coronation," Arabella said urgently. "And I think Lord Chancellor Hawthorne is involved in some kind of plot with King Marcus. I found letters suggesting that Hawthorne wants Elena to appear at the coronation to create chaos." This revelation caused an even stronger reaction from her parents. King Edmund sat down heavily in his chair, and Queen Isabel stood up and began pacing herself. "Show us these letters," King Edmund demanded. "They're in the secret room with all the other documents," Arabella said. "But, Father, we need to contact Elena immediately. If Hawthorne is manipulating her, she might be walking into a trap." Queen Isabel stopped pacing and looked at her husband. "Edmund, what if Elena tries to come to the coronation on her own? What if she believes she's supposed to be there?" "Then we would have a disaster," King Edmund replied grimly. "The kingdom knows nothing about Elena. If she suddenly appeared claiming to be Arabella's twin sister and the rightful co-heir to the throne, it would create exactly the kind of political chaos that Marcus wants." Arabella felt frustration building inside her. "So what exactly was your long-term plan? Were you just going to keep Elena hidden forever? She's not a political problem to be managed. She's your daughter." "Of course we weren't going to keep her hidden forever," Queen Isabel said defensively. "We were planning to bring her home eventually, once the political situation stabilized." "When would that be?" Arabella asked. "Elena has already waited 25 years. How much longer were you expecting her to wait?" King Edmund rubbed his forehead as though he had a headache. "We don't know," he admitted. "The situation with Astoria has gotten worse instead of better. King Marcus has been making increasingly aggressive demands, and introducing Elena now might give him more leverage over us." "Or it might give us more leverage over him," Arabella pointed out. "If Elena is as intelligent and capable as her letters suggest, wouldn't two princesses be stronger than one?" Her parents looked at each other again, and Arabella could see that they were having an entire conversation through glances and expressions. "There's something else we haven't told you," Queen Isabel said finally, "something that makes the situation even more complicated." Arabella felt her heart sink. "What now?" King Edmund opened a drawer in his desk and pulled out a folder that looked different from the documents she had found in the secret room. 3 weeks ago, we received word that the Duchess of Millbrook had died suddenly. Elena is currently staying with the Duchess's nephew, Lord Blackwood, but it's not a permanent arrangement. "Why didn't you bring her home then?" Arabella asked. "Because Lord Blackwood is engaged to King Marcus's sister," Queen Isabel explained. "If Elena is staying in his household when that marriage takes place, she would essentially become King Marcus's ward. He would have direct control over her." The implications of this hit Arabella like a physical blow. "So, Elena is in danger right now?" "We've been trying to arrange alternative housing for her," King Edmund said, "but it has to be done carefully and secretly. If we move too quickly or obviously, it might draw King Marcus's attention to her existence. And if we move too slowly, she might end up under King Marcus's control anyway," Arabella pointed out. "How is this a good plan?" "It's not a good plan," Queen Isabel admitted. "It's just the least terrible option we could think of." Arabella stood up and began pacing herself, trying to think through all the complicated factors involved. Elena was in potential danger from King Marcus, but she was also being manipulated by Lord Hawthorne. Their parents were trying to protect both daughters, but their caution might actually be putting Elena at greater risk. "I want to meet her," Arabella said suddenly. "I want to go to Elena directly and bring her home myself." "Absolutely not," King Edmund said immediately. "If you leave the palace now, less than a month before your coronation, it would raise too many questions. And if you're seen with Elena, it would reveal her existence before we're ready to handle the political consequences." "Then what do you suggest?" Arabella asked. "Because doing nothing doesn't seem to be working very well." Her parents were quiet for a long moment. Finally, Queen Isabel spoke up. "There might be another option," she said slowly. "We could arrange for Elena to come to the palace secretly, disguised as a new servant or lady-in-waiting. She could be here for the coronation preparations, and we could reveal her identity at a time and manner of our choosing rather than letting Lord Hawthorne spring his trap." King Edmund looked skeptical. "That's risky. If Elena is recognized by anyone who has seen her before, or if she says something that reveals her true identity, we could still end up with the chaos we're trying to avoid." "But it would get her away from Lord Blackwood and King Marcus's influence," Arabella pointed out. "And it would let me finally meet my sister before the coronation." "It would also let us control the situation better than if we just wait and react to whatever Lord Hawthorne is planning," Queen Isabel added. King Edmund was quiet for a while, considering the options. Finally, he nodded slowly. "Very well. We'll send a trusted messenger to Elena with instructions to come to the palace disguised as a lady-in-waiting. But Arabella, you must promise me that you will not reveal her identity to anyone until we decide how to handle the public announcement." "I promise," Arabella said immediately. "When will she arrive?" "If we send the message today, she could be here within a week," Queen Isabel calculated. "That would give us 3 weeks to prepare for how to integrate her into the coronation ceremony, if we decide to do that at all." "We're definitely doing that," Arabella said firmly. "Elena has waited 25 years to be acknowledged as part of this family. I'm not letting her wait any longer." King Edmund looked at his daughter with a mixture of pride and concern. "You may not understand all the political implications of that decision, Arabella." "Then explain them to me," Arabella replied. "But either way, Elena is coming home." As her parents began discussing the practical details of bringing Elena to the palace secretly, Arabella felt both relieved and nervous. She was finally going to meet her twin sister, but she was also stepping into a complicated political situation that could affect the future of their entire kingdom. Outside the study windows, storm clouds were gathering over the palace, and Arabella wondered if they were an omen of the challenges that lay ahead. In less than a week, she would meet the sister who had been hidden from her for 25 years. In less than a month, she would become queen, and somehow, she would have to figure out how to protect her family and her kingdom from the plots and schemes of people she had trusted her entire life. The game had changed completely, and Arabella was no longer just a princess preparing for her coronation. She was a daughter fighting to reunite her family, a sister trying to protect someone she had never met, and a future queen who was about to discover that ruling a kingdom meant making decisions that could affect countless lives. As the storm began to break outside, Arabella realized that the most challenging part of her journey was just beginning. The letter arrived at Lord Blackwood's estate on a gray Thursday morning, delivered by a royal messenger who waited patiently for Elena's response. Elena read the instructions carefully, her heart racing as she realized that after 25 years of waiting, she was finally being called home to the palace. According to the letter, she would travel to the capital disguised as Lady Catherine Whitmore, a distant cousin of the royal family who had been selected to serve as Princess Arabella's personal lady-in-waiting during the coronation preparations. She would have her own chambers in the palace, and she would be introduced to the royal family gradually over the coming weeks. What the letter didn't explain was why this deception was necessary, or why she couldn't simply return home as Princess Elena. But Elena had learned patience during her long years of exile, and she trusted that her parents had good reasons for their careful approach. 5 days later, Elena arrived at the palace just as the sun was setting behind the towering stone walls. She wore a simple traveling dress and carried only a small bag of personal belongings, having left most of her possessions at Lord Blackwood's estate, as instructed. Her heart pounded as the familiar gates opened to welcome her home for the first time since she was an infant. The head housekeeper, Mrs. Thornberry, greeted her at the servants' entrance and showed her to a small but comfortable chamber in the east wing of the palace. Elena had stayed in grand guest rooms during her years with the Duchess, but this modest space felt more precious to her than any luxury, because it was inside the home where her sister lived. "Lady Catherine," Mrs. Thornberry said as she lit the candles in Elena's room, "Princess Arabella is expecting you in the morning. You'll be helping her with various coronation preparations, and she's quite looking forward to having another young lady around during this busy time." Elena nodded and smiled, trying to hide how nervous she felt about meeting Arabella. What would her twin sister be like? Would they have anything in common after growing up in such different circumstances? Would Arabella accept her, or would she see Elena as a threat to her position? That night, Elena barely slept. She stood at her small window looking out over the palace gardens, trying to memorize every detail of the home she had dreamed about for so many years. Tomorrow she would meet Arabella, and their parents would begin the process of revealing the truth about their family. Meanwhile, 2 floors above in the royal apartments, Arabella was also having trouble sleeping. She had spent the day in meetings with various coronation planners, all while knowing that her twin sister was traveling toward the palace. Every time someone mentioned how excited the kingdom was to celebrate their beloved princess, Arabella felt guilty knowing that half the kingdom's royal family had been hidden away. She had also been watching Lord Hawthorne carefully during the past week, looking for any sign that he suspected Elena was coming to the palace. So far, he seemed focused on the normal coronation preparations, but Arabella remained alert for any indication that his treacherous plans were moving forward. The next morning arrived gray and misty, with a light rain that made the palace gardens look mysterious and romantic. Arabella dressed carefully in a simple blue gown, wanting to look approachable for her first meeting with Elena. She had decided to meet her sister in the small sitting room adjacent to her private chambers, a space that felt intimate and comfortable rather than formal and intimidating. Mrs. Thornberry knocked on the sitting room door at exactly 10 o'clock, just as they had arranged. "Your Highness," the housekeeper said formally, "may I present Lady Catherine Whitmore, your new lady-in-waiting." Elena stepped into the room, and Arabella's breath caught in her throat. It was like looking into a mirror that reflected not just her appearance, but her entire soul. Elena had the same dark curls, the same green eyes, the same delicate features that Arabella saw in her own reflection every morning. But there were differences, too. Elena carried herself with a quiet grace that spoke of years spent observing rather than being observed, and her eyes held a depth of patience and understanding that Arabella envied. "Your Highness," Elena said, curtsying perfectly as she had been taught to do when meeting royalty. But as she looked up, Arabella could see recognition flickering in her eyes, along with hope and nervousness. "Please call me Arabella," Arabella said, trying to keep her voice steady. "And thank you, Mrs. Thornberry. That will be all for now." The housekeeper withdrew, closing the door behind her and leaving the two sisters alone for the first time in their lives. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. They simply stood there looking at each other, both overwhelmed by the strange experience of seeing their own face on another person. "Elena?" Arabella whispered finally. Elena's composure broke, and tears began flowing down her cheeks. "You know who I am? I've been reading about you for weeks," Arabella said, her own eyes filling with tears. "I found the documents about our separation, about the prophecy, about everything. I know you've been waiting all these years to come home." Elena crossed the room quickly and embraced her sister, both of them crying and laughing at the same time. It felt strange and wonderful and completely natural all at once. "I've dreamed about this moment for so long," Elena said through her tears. "I was starting to think it would never happen." "I'm so sorry," Arabella replied. "I'm sorry you've had to wait, and I'm sorry I never knew about you. If I had known, I would have found a way to bring you home years ago." They sat down together on the small sofa near the window, still holding each other's hands as though afraid the other might disappear. "Tell me everything," Arabella said. "I want to know about your life, about who you are, about what you've been thinking and feeling all these years." Elena smiled through her tears. "I want to know everything about you, too. I've been reading reports about your education and your activities, but that's not the same as really knowing you." They spent the next 3 hours talking, sharing stories and comparing experiences. Elena told Arabella about her life with the Duchess of Millbrook, about the excellent education she had received, and about the loneliness of growing up knowing she had a twin sister she wasn't allowed to meet. Arabella shared her own struggles with royal responsibilities, her love of reading and music, and her recent discoveries about their family's secrets. As they talked, both sisters realized how much they had in common despite their different upbringings. They both loved history and languages. They both struggled with the more tedious aspects of royal protocol, and they both felt a deep sense of responsibility for the welfare of their kingdom. They also discovered that they complemented each other well. Where Arabella was impulsive and emotional, Elena was thoughtful and analytical. Where Elena sometimes hesitated to speak up, Arabella was naturally confident and direct. "Elena," Arabella said as their conversation began to wind down, "I need to tell you about something important. I discovered that Lord Hawthorne has been plotting against our family, and I think he's been manipulating you as part of his plan." Elena's expression grew serious. "What kind of plot?" Arabella explained about the intercepted letters, about Lord Hawthorne's communication with King Marcus, and about the plan to use Elena's appearance at the coronation to create political chaos. "That explains a lot," Elena said thoughtfully when Arabella finished. "Lord Hawthorne has been sending me encouraging letters recently. telling me that you were planning to acknowledge me immediately after the coronation. I thought it was strange that the letters were coming from him instead of from mother and father, but I assumed he was acting on their behalf. So you were planning to come to the coronation ceremony? Arabella asked. Yes, Elena admitted. Lord Hawthorne's letters made it sound like you were expecting me to be there. He even sent detailed instructions about how I should present myself and what I should say when I stepped forward to be acknowledged. Arabella felt a chill run down her spine. What were his instructions? Elena frowned as she remembered. He told me to wait until after you had been officially crowned, then to step forward and announce myself as Princess Elena, your twin sister and equal heir to the throne of Valdoria. He said it would be a wonderful surprise for the kingdom to learn that they had two princesses instead of one. That would have been a disaster, Arabella said. If you had appeared without warning and claimed to be an equal heir, it would have looked like you were challenging my right to rule. Lord Hawthorne was setting you up to look like a rival instead of a sister. Elena's face grew pale as she realized how close she had come to walking into a trap. I would have destroyed everything for both of us. Not destroyed, Arabella corrected, but it would have created the exact kind of political crisis that King Marcus wants. He could have used the confusion to justify military intervention in our kingdom. Before Elena could respond, there was a sharp knock on the sitting room door. Arabella quickly wiped her eyes and tried to compose herself. "Come in," she called. To both sisters' surprise, King Edmund and Queen Isabel entered the room together, looking nervous and hopeful. "Mother! Father!" Elena exclaimed, standing up quickly and curtsying formally. Queen Isabel crossed the room immediately and pulled Elena into a tight embrace. "My darling girl, welcome home." King Edmund joined the embrace, and for several minutes the reunited family simply held each other, 25 years of separation finally coming to an end. "I'm sorry we waited so long to bring you home," King Edmund said eventually. "We thought we were protecting both of you, but we realize now that we were just creating more problems." "Are you going to acknowledge Elena publicly now?" Arabella asked. Her parents exchanged a look. "We've been discussing that question extensively," Queen Isabel said. "We want to, but we need to do it in a way that strengthens our family, rather than creating vulnerability that our enemies can exploit." "I have an idea," Elena said quietly. "What if we don't announce me as a surprise at the coronation, but instead introduce me to the kingdom gradually over the next few weeks? People could get used to the idea that there are two princesses before the coronation ceremony, so it wouldn't be a shock." "That's brilliant," Arabella said immediately. "We could say that Elena has been completing her education abroad and has returned home just in time for the coronation." King Edmund looked thoughtful. "That might work. It would give us control over the narrative instead of letting Lord Hawthorne dictate how Elena's existence is revealed." "But what about Lord Hawthorne himself?" Queen Isabel asked. "He's still planning to spring his trap at the coronation ceremony." "Then we spring our own trap first," Arabella said with determination. "We reveal Elena on our own terms. And when Lord Hawthorne tries to create his dramatic scene, it will fall flat because everyone will already know about her." Elena nodded eagerly. "And if he tries to suggest that I'm challenging Arabella's right to rule, I can publicly declare my complete support for her as queen. We could even announce that Elena will serve as Arabella's chief advisor and representative," King Edmund suggested. "That would make it clear that we're working together rather than competing against each other." As the family continued planning their strategy, Arabella felt a sense of excitement building. For the first time since she had discovered the truth about Elena, she felt like they were taking control of the situation rather than just reacting to other people's plots. Over the next 2 weeks, Elena made carefully orchestrated public appearances throughout the kingdom. She was introduced as Princess Elena, who had been completing advanced diplomatic training in a neighboring allied kingdom and had returned home to support her sister's coronation. The story explained her absence without making it sound suspicious, and it gave people time to get used to the idea that Valdoria had two princesses. The reaction from the kingdom was overwhelmingly positive. People were delighted to learn that their beloved Princess Arabella had a twin sister, and they were impressed by Elena's obvious intelligence and dedication to the crown. Several nobles who met Elena during these public appearances wrote letters to the royal family praising her wisdom and suggesting that Valdoria was fortunate to have two such capable young women in the royal family. Meanwhile, Arabella and Elena spent every possible moment together, making up for lost time and learning to work as a team. They discovered that their different strengths made them more effective together than either could be alone. Arabella's natural leadership skills combined with Elena's analytical abilities created a formidable partnership. Lord Hawthorne, meanwhile, seemed increasingly frustrated as his plans unraveled. He had clearly expected to control the timing and manner of Elena's revelation, and the royal family's proactive approach left him with no dramatic surprise to spring at the coronation. 3 days before the coronation ceremony, Lord Hawthorne requested a private audience with King Edmund. Arabella insisted on being present for this meeting, and Elena remained hidden nearby to listen to what the treacherous chancellor might reveal. "Your Majesty," Lord Hawthorne began in his smooth, diplomatic voice, "I must say that the appearance of Princess Elena has been quite a surprise to the kingdom." "Has it?" King Edmund replied mildly. "I would have thought that the return of my daughter would be a cause for celebration rather than surprise." "Of course, Your Majesty, but some of our neighbors have been asking questions about why Princess Elena's existence was kept secret for so many years. King Marcus, in particular, has sent several messages asking for clarification about the royal succession." Arabella spoke up before her father could respond. "What exactly has King Marcus been asking about?" Lord Hawthorne turned to her with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "He's wondering whether Princess Elena's return indicates any uncertainty about your claim to the throne, Your Highness. He's concerned about the stability of our kingdom during this transition period." "How thoughtful of him to be concerned about our stability," Arabella said dryly. "You may tell King Marcus that Princess Elena and I are in complete agreement about the succession. I will be crowned as queen, and she will serve as my chief advisor and representative to other kingdoms." "Of course, Your Highness," Lord Hawthorne said smoothly. "But King Marcus also wanted me to convey his desire to arrange a meeting with both princesses after the coronation. He believes that stronger diplomatic ties between our kingdoms would benefit everyone involved." King Edmund's expression hardened. "We'll consider King Marcus's request in due time, but our immediate focus is on the coronation ceremony, not on diplomatic meetings." After Lord Hawthorne left, Arabella and Elena emerged from her hiding place to discuss what they had just heard. "He's still trying to create problems for us," Elena observed. "Even though his original plan failed, he's looking for new ways to use me against you." "And King Marcus is still pushing for those marriage negotiations," Arabella added. "He wants to meet both of us so he can decide which sister would be more useful to him." "Neither of us is going to be useful to him," Elena said firmly. "We're not political pawns to be traded away for temporary peace." King Edmund looked proud of both his daughters. "You're absolutely right, and tomorrow's coronation will make it clear to King Marcus and everyone else that Valdoria's royal family is united and strong." The coronation ceremony dawned bright and clear, with crowds of people filling the cathedral and the streets outside the palace. Arabella wore her grandmother's crown and the ceremonial robes that had been worn by generations of Valdorian queens. Elena stood beside her throughout the ceremony, wearing a specially designed gown that marked her as a princess, while making it clear that Arabella was the one being crowned. As the archbishop placed the crown on Arabella's head and proclaimed her Queen of Valdoria, Elena was the first person to kneel and pledge her loyalty to the new queen. The gesture was both politically smart and genuinely heartfelt, and it brought tears to the eyes of many people watching the ceremony. Lord Hawthorne stood with the other nobles during the ceremony, his face carefully neutral. But Arabella noticed that he seemed tense and frustrated, as though his plans had been thoroughly defeated. After the ceremony, as the royal family greeted well-wishers and dignitaries, King Marcus's ambassador approached them with an ornate gift and another invitation for the princesses to visit Astoria. "Thank you for the kind invitation," Queen Arabella replied formally. "Princess Elena and I will certainly consider it when our diplomatic calendar allows." "Of course, Your Majesty," the ambassador replied. "King Marcus is particularly interested in discussing matters of mutual benefit to both kingdoms." "I'm sure he is," Elena said pleasantly. "Please tell King Marcus that Valdoria values its independence and looks forward to maintaining peaceful relations with all our neighbors based on mutual respect." The ambassador's smile became slightly strained at this diplomatic way of saying that Valdoria would not be intimidated or manipulated by Astoria's aggressive tactics. As the celebration continued into the evening, Arabella and Elena found themselves standing together on a balcony overlooking the palace gardens, where they had both played as children, though only Arabella remembered those early years. "Do you think this is really over?" Elena asked. "Will Lord Hawthorne and King Marcus accept that their plans failed, or will they keep trying to create problems for us?" "They'll probably keep trying," Arabella replied honestly. "But they're going to discover that two princesses working together are much harder to defeat than one princess standing alone." Elena smiled. "I've been waiting my whole life to have a sister to stand with. I'm not going anywhere." "Good," Arabella said, taking Elena's hand. "Because I've been ruling alone my whole life without even knowing it, and I'm looking forward to having someone I can trust completely." As fireworks began exploding over the palace in celebration of the coronation, the twin princesses of Valdoria looked out over their kingdom together. They had overcome 25 years of separation, exposed and defeated a dangerous political plot, and proven that the ancient prophecy about twin rulers could come true in its most positive form. The kingdom now had not one but two dedicated princesses ready to work for the welfare of their people. Lord Hawthorne's treachery had been neutralized, King Marcus's schemes had been thwarted, and the royal family was stronger than it had ever been. Standing together on the balcony with the celebration continuing below them, Queen Arabella and Princess Elena knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them as sisters, partners, and friends. Their long separation was over, and their shared future was just beginning.